Hi Daniel, meet Ming.
Hi Ming, how are you?
I'm okay, thank you.
Ming's the designer of the garment.
Oh, brilliant. Oh,
This,
wow.
this
I
is
saw
his.
it in real life. It was amazing.
Oh, thank you very
Yeah,
much.
yeah.
Hello, and thanks for watching. My name's Adam Brown. I'm a member of the Centre for the Study of the Networked Image at London South Bank University, and also lecturer on the BA Honours Photography course. I'm going to be talking about some initiatives we initiated earlier on this year, trying to replace some of the components of learning that were lost under lockdown, in particular studio lighting, but most significantly live briefs, and the ability to work with external agencies. It's always been a big part of our first year delivery. That we try in the second semester to get the first years to take on a live brief or a simulated live brief. And we've been working with organisations such as Art on the Underground, Shakespeare's Globe, etc., etc. This is a piece of work by Ewan Coleman, graduates this year, and in his first year, second semester, he was part of a cohort that collaborated with Art on the Underground and the designer Linda Sterling, famous for her work with Buzzcocks, who was at the time doing a brilliant wraparound collage on the facade of Southwark Underground Station. Now, what's exciting about this is not just the technical outcome, but the dialogue and the discourse that goes on between the students and the artist. And that's such a rich part of the first year experience that we felt we didn't want to miss out on. So my intention for this year is to try and find some way of making a live brief happen between the students and a professional designer. There's a big interest in fashion in the first year, as there always is. But whenever I'm teaching studio lighting, I'm acutely aware of how the studio is a social situation and how students going into that situation relate to each other, relate to the model, but also try to triangulate that relationship between model, viewer, and photographer, and to see it as a fully functional network whereby humans, non-humans, and absent humans interact with each other in a very strange and abstract space. And I'll show you strange and abstract space now. This is SetALight 3D. This is a piece of software we bought for year one back in semester one to augment the little bits of in-person studio teaching we were able to offer them. We were doing small socially distanced groups in the studio, 3 or 4 students at a time, going through basic studio lighting repertoire such as 3-point lighting, chiaroscuro, etc., etc. We have a 3-point lighting set up here. We're able to navigate around, see the studio from all sorts of different directions. We can kind of zoom in and out and demonstrate exactly how the position of the lights, the strength of the lights, and also the camera settings affect the shot. We have the ability to export images and setting diagrams, lighting diagrams from this package as well for click to view. It can create a preview, which I can then render. It can also output a lighting diagram so that the students themselves or members of staff in advance of their studio booking can go in and rig the lights to reproduce exactly the lighting situation that they've created. So we wanted students to actually work with designers, we wanted them to style their own shots, and we wanted them to work in other ways than posing the model. I have this project in semester 2 of the second year called Control, and what I do in that project is to get students to run little scenarios in the studio. So they're not just posing a model, they're setting up a interactive, performative, and discursive situation. Previous years, students have done things like organise speeches, performances. Pass the Parcel was a great one where the student who was being shot opened a series of wrapped boxes with the surprise at the end. This is a piece by 2 students who played a game of trust where they swapped mobile phones and each gave the other one permission to look at each other's social media feed, and at that point the other members of the group were taking portraits of this scenario and trying to capture that moment of tension, that moment of trust. How do you reproduce this kind of thing in SetALight? Well, this is where we were trying to get to with this project. So I wanted to create a rich as possible experience for the students as I could. I wanted them to work with studio lighting. I wanted them to experience the studio as much as possible. I wanted them to work with contemporary design and cutting edge fashion, and I wanted them to be able to interact with the designer and to have conversations about the aesthetic, about the idea, and to match the lighting that they're producing and the images that they're making with the ideas and concepts of the designer themselves. So there's an understanding that when you're not just doing a dry technical exercise, but you're trying to bring your skills as a photographer and your understanding of light together with the aesthetic of a designer who has put a great deal of thought, imagination, and creativity into a particular garment. One of the first things I asked myself when I started working with SetALight was about the ability to import custom 3D objects into this environment and light them myself. So say hypothetically, if I wanted to scan a garment or scan an object and import it and light it as if it was in a proper studio, would I be able to do that? And I had a couple of email exchanges with Elixxier, the developers, that suggested they were interested in doing this, and they responded by saying, well, what is it? What is this definition of fashion that you're considering that is so different from the models that we've got on offer? And at that point, that challenge was thrown down, and I went off in search of some very interesting fashion designers. The first designer I approached was Migzhang Sun, and he's a designer of wearable art, and his pieces are very physical, very sculptural, and they really play with ideas of the physicality of fabric, its density, its weight. This is an intensely handcrafted piece which was made over many hours. Pleated fabric top and a kind of one piece down below, which is based on kind of computer generated designs. So beautiful games with colour, form, shape, and the way in which this thing moves through space. What we're looking at here, of course, is a real photograph taken. Well, I say real. What does that mean? A photograph taken in a photographic studio on a conventional still camera. This is a piece which he entered for the 2018 World of Wearable Art Awards, in which he won the Newcomers Award. And this is covered in tiny spheres, and it's incredibly heavy to wear. So again, moving inside this thing requires dexterity and awareness of your own body, its physicality and the way it makes you move, and it falls and flows like a sculptural material. The second designer I approached was Harikrishnan, who some of you may well have encountered before through his collection went viral in 2020. Made a huge splash. This is his graduation collection from the London College of Fashion, and the designs seem outlandish, but they're based on a shift in perception. He was trying to see the world from the perspective of his dog, and the way in which being close to the ground distorts the perspective of the human body. So for a photographer, this is an amazingly visual idea, and the idea of trying to incorporate a shift in perspective into a studio project is a wonderful opportunity. So as well as the buzz of this, it has a very optical element, which I'm really excited to work with. So he's done some scans with us, which we've yet to play with, but we will be integrating that into the summer school later on. This is FormCapture, and they're a company that specializes in 3D volumetric scanning for the fashion industry, the fine art industry, etc. So they have an amazing set of kit which they use to produce files which can then be used for a variety of different purposes. So basically we've managed to put a bunch of quite generous creative people together to make this project happen. Fred at FormCapture, when he was approached about the project, he was very excited to see how his volumetric scans could be used within this simulated photography studio. He'd already worked with Palace, with Nike, with Harrods menswear department, so he was immersed in this idea of three-dimensional fashion. The designers were keen to see how their work would be rendered into 3D and what these models would be able to do, what they would look like. And Elixxier were quite keen to be challenged to import avant-garde fashion into SetALight and see how this thing worked. The intention behind all of this work was to create a completely socially distanced workflow to be able to send the garments to FormCapture in Peckham, get them scanned without anyone having to meet each other. The files that were produced then to be able to FTP'd over to myself to check out, then over to Elixxier in Germany, who would import it into SetALight, and then for the package to be sent or interacted with by the students without anyone ever having to come into contact with anybody else.
Yeah, I think at the moment, just because my clothes is especially the upper body, is not really like fitted sizes. It's like oversizing stuff. So sometimes I guess I don't know, at this moment, from what I saw, some of the posing doesn't really work for the clothes, because I guess logically the computer doesn't really recognize some oversizing look, how you're gonna drape or something. So that's the only concern of me at this moment. So, but of course, the kind of some other look, the poses, definitely working. I can see that someone very close to the photos that I actually photoed. So yeah.
I think that would be something to communicate then. We're talking about, you know, now that you've told me that your distinction between a good pose and a bad pose is how the fabric drapes and the size, that now gives me something to work with creatively. If I was to go in here now, think about and play around with the lighting. That's a little simple nugget of information which helps me decide. And this is the kind of thing the students would need, is if they have that in mind, then hopefully they would think, okay, well, if I'm making these distinctions, I'm doing this work, I'm now looking at this as if it was fabric. And
the fabric, because the fabric seriously has different personality, of course. I mean, some of the fabric is seriously draping very dramatically, and especially for this look, it doesn't really drape, but it bends. Some of the kind of fabric corner, they bend in a really fluent way. So I guess that's the thing. Yeah, like this pose, I think it's working. That's for sure. Yeah, it looks really like the actual actual photo to me.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. You got it.
I like how it looks. Okay, can I change the lens? Yeah. Let's see the lights. Set up. Moonlight.
Okay. It's also useful to see is how it actually works.
I want to get rid of that shadow.